Hey guys, today I'm with Julie Justice and we're talking about mental health. So we're talking about in the perinatal period and then in the postpartum period. And we're talking about the differences today between controlled mental health in the birth process and what that could look like, and uncontrolled depression and what that could look like in the birth room. So when you have a birth team surrounding you and a healthy mental space and what that looks like versus if you don't have those things in place and you're just trying to wing it. So let's get to it. What does a contraction feel like? How do I know if I'm in labor? And what does a day of labor look like? Wait, is this normal? Hey, I'm Heidi. My best friends call me Heids. I'm a certified birth doula, host of this podcast, and author of Birth Story, an interactive pregnancy guidebook. I have supported hundreds of women through their labor and deliveries, and I believe every one of them, and you, deserves a microphone and a stage. So here we are. Listen each week to get answers to these tough questions. Birth Story, where we talk about pregnancy, labor, deliveries, where we tell our stories and share our feelings. And of course, chat about our favorite baby products and motherhood. And because I'm passionate about birth outcomes, you will hear from some of the top experts in labor and delivery. Whether you are pregnant, trying desperately to get pregnant, or you just love a good birth story, I hope you will stick around and be part of this Birth Story family. Okay, just a little something before we get started today, and that is, what happens if you don't take Birth Story Academy? So let's say you're pregnant, that's why you're listening to the Birth Story podcast, and you're preparing for a hospital birth that's upcoming. And of course, this podcast gives you tons of free information, right? But do you really understand the stages of labor? How to know when you're in labor? What if you have to have an induction? What about a cesarean section? What about all of the decisions that you have to make once you get to the hospital? So you get there and then they put you in triage. Birth Story Academy walks you through all the things that happen, like that rapid fire with monitoring and blood work and questions and IV ports. And do you want an epidural? I don't know. Do you? In Birth Story Academy, we literally break down all of those decisions, pros, cons, risks, benefits, intuition, and we get into it. We make birth plans, we do birth visions, we listen to birth affirmations and parenting affirmations. And at the end of it, you know exactly what's going to happen when you go into labor and when you get to the hospital. What's going to happen after you give birth, newborn care preferences, how to take care of your baby. So I guess what I'm getting at is, if you're not in Birth Story Academy, what's your plan, right? I want to be your teacher. I want you to come join me in Birth Story Academy and let me walk you through all of the decisions that you have to make if you're having a hospital birth, and how to have body autonomy and how to have informed consent and informed refusal. I'm going to teach you and your partner, if you have one, everything that you need to know about birthing in a hospital so that you can walk in that door with some swagger, with some confidence, wash that anxiety away because you learned everything you needed to learn in Birth Story Academy and you are ready to crush that birth, right? Okay, let's do it. And let's get to this episode. Hey, Julie Justice. Welcome to the Birth Story podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing this morning?
I'm so good. Thank you for reaching out to me and really wanting to share your stories and just spread light and awareness and love to mental health and the role that it can play in the birth process. So I'm really excited that you're here, and we're going to just dig in right away with your first story, because we're going to get through 2 birth stories, you guys, today, which is amazing, because we really need to talk about the one and then the other, and then one set of things that can change the way that the birth unfolds, and then how it can be when your mental health is more in control and you have an informed birth team and the support that you need. So let's dig right in. Julie,
Yes.
did you have a fertility journey? Was this planned, unplanned? Tell us all the things about getting pregnant for your first child.
So it was very much unplanned. My now husband and I had just met and we got pregnant the first time we had sex. So it was completely unexpected.
Was that
and
like on the first night you met?
yeah. No. We had known each other for like a couple weeks, but it was like our first like official date, and it
Good for you, Julie, with that holding out a little bit. Now, so like, what I hate to say like what happened, but if it was like an unplanned pregnancy, like, can you walk the audience through that? Like, did the condom break? Were you caught up in the heat of the moment? Was there I forgot to take a birth control pill, or was it just failed something? Like, what happened?
at that point in my life, I was a little bit of a party girl. I had kind of not been great with like my NuvaRing, so I was off of that, and there was no condom, and I was just like, oh, whatever, it'll be fine. And I mean, the next day he was like, should we get Plan B? I was like, no, I know my cycle. It's not that time of month, and I was totally wrong.
This is like, I have two types of doula clients, Julie. This story, and then like long fertility.
Yep.
It's like, I don't seem to ever catch the in between clients, doula clients that are like, yeah, we like tried, for a couple months and then got pregnant. It's like, I've been trying for 5 years and we need a doula, or like, I sort of know this person I'm having a baby with, but
Right.
I guess we'll get to know each other. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right now, like as an older, I'm 43, but I once was, Julie, this person, right? Who slept with my husband on the first night that I met him. Like, yeah, this is a great idea. That wasn't the first time this happened. So like, I literally, I never got pregnant. So like, I can't imagine that moment. So you've only known someone a few weeks, you get pregnant. Do you find out with this person?
Yes.
You do. Okay. So you took a test together.
I had like taken a test. Like I didn't like tell him I took the test, but like he was in the bathroom like brushing his teeth that morning, and I was like, this is positive. And it was like the faintest line. He's like, no, there's no way. We'll do another one. I mean, 6 tests later, definitely positive.
Okay. Now, how old are both of you guys at this point?
I was 24 and he was 23.
Okay. So both of you were quite young.
Yeah.
And so you said he was brushing his teeth in the bathroom. So does this mean like you met and then you basically spent every single day together for like the next 8 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He moved in real quick. Like there's just one day he was there and never left.
Okay. So you guys met and it was like instantly like gravitational pull. Like this was not like we went on a date, had sex, I got pregnant. This was like gravitational pull. Like I met you, I had sex with you, I need to spend every minute with you.
Pretty much.
We've all had that happen. And like in my case, I married the person.
Right.
And it sounds like you did too. So is this okay? I'm like, you did too. Okay. So you guys are together, you find out. I can't even imagine at 23 and 24, like what's the reaction? Are you like, and and this is raw. Like, were you like, we have to have an abortion? Or were you like, oh my God, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me? Or what were you thinking?
I was totally overwhelmed. I was like, well, I mean, I guess we're having a baby, I mean, the abortion was like mentioned as an option, but neither of us really felt like it was the route we wanted to go.
Yeah.
I am very thankful that that's an option. Just because, at certain times in my life, that would have been the route I went. But, I decided, I guess we're doing it. I had the support of my family. I told my sister and my mom, and they were both so excited, like worried because I just met this guy, but really excited. It was the first baby, grandbaby in the family. So It was a lot of support was there.
And you've now married this person. So I also like, when you meet someone and the family meets someone, like we kind of know right away if they're like a douchebag.
Right.
No. So like there's a general consensus going on that like you're very drawn to this person and want to have a child with him. And like your family also seems like they thought that this was a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So at what point, like at this point, well, I should say, did you feel like you were in love already?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Had you said it?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think it was like that day that we got pregnant.
Yeah, like the fifth time I saw my husband, it's a whole long story, not for this podcast, but like I met my husband, totally fell in love. Like clearly I told you I slept with him. He deployed like literally 48 hours later for 4 months.
Oh my God.
And I was like, and I was 35 years old. 34 years old. And I was like, oh my God, I've met the love of my life. Like, oh my God, now I can't see him for 4 months. The next time I saw him, his like plane for the Navy like landed in his station in Hawaii. And I like get off the plane and I'm like, I love you. I said it. But I had technically only seen this person like 3 days in person. So I totally get it when things
Time to let it marinate, you know?
Yes. I was like, oh God, I just said it first. I never thought I would do that too. Okay. So you guys are gonna like it sounds like for an unplanned and unexpected pregnancy, it was very welcome.
Yeah.
And you were excited about it. Okay.
Yeah.
But now we're 24 years old. What's like your life circumstance? Like with education, job, money,
So
healthcare?
I'm a dental hygienist.
Okay.
At the time I was working a lot of like temp jobs, going like I was in Northern Virginia at the time. So I was all over the place, just working like crazy. And that was my focus. But that was really all it was. It was
So
just work and, little partying on the weekends and realizing all that had to stop. And
but you had
so that was
healthcare.
um, yeah, I was still on my mom's health insurance at the time because I
Oh
was 24.
yeah,
Yeah, so I was able to
boom.
be on there until I was 26. So
Okay.
I snuck one baby in on her great health insurance. So that was awesome.
Awesome. Okay. So now your husband, but at the time boyfriend, is brushing his teeth in the bathroom. And then I guess at that point, are you like, well, just kind of move in because we're having a baby together?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
It
love
wasn't
it.
really a conversation. It was just like, well, I guess you're here now.
Oh my gosh. I love all of the ways in which like marriages and babies happen. Like these stories just are so fun to me. Okay. So let's talk about this pregnancy. So what, like, are you one of those people that grew up like watching birth on YouTube or like listening to birth stories? Did you know anything about birth?
So my best friend had a baby when I was 18 and like I was there for it. I wasn't in the room, but like I was like outside the room, like peeking in and like, so that was really cool. And my sister was actually doing the program to become a birth doula at the time. So, I've been talking to her about it and stuff. And like I have a little brother. I remember my mom being pregnant. So it's always been something that's like been around and like a positive thing. It wasn't like a scary thought. So like I really wanted to try like going the natural route because like it just felt natural, I guess,
Okay. And by natural, you mean like an unmedicated?
unmedicated.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how does your pregnancy go?
It was rough. I
Okay.
was just, I think mentally I was just drained. I was depressed. I would, in a new relationship with this guy, I don't know, I'm having a baby, it's just all of the things. And I gained like 50 pounds because I wasn't very physically active. I didn't cook at the time. So I was doing a lot of pizza, Chipotle, just eating like crap. So it made me feel so just, ugh.
That
So
Chipotle will get you every time. I swear
every time.
nothing tasted as good as like a
Oh,
Chipotle burrito when I was pregnant.
love it. Love
Julie, I gained 70 pounds. My audience knows that. So I'm like 50. I'm like, that's good. Like you're doing great. Um, so do you, like I guess I'm like I felt so terrible when I was pregnant that I can't imagine dating like a newly. So were you
Right.
guys able to make time for each other? Like at least like Netflix and chill
Oh
or
yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
okay. I was like, what does dating like look like when you're trying to like learn someone new,
Right.
while being pregnant?
I know. It was like they say that like that first year of like a baby's life is like the most stressful in a relationship. And I was like, that's when we got to know each other. Like,
Mhm. So at this point, you're on your mom's insurance. Are you like, I'm going to give birth at a hospital or a home birth or a birth center? Like, what was that looking like for you?
Um, but that was actually kind of a funny thing. So my phone at the time was broken,
Okay.
because I was a 24-year-old party girl, didn't care, you know. So my mommy had to call to make my doctor's appointment for me for my pregnancy. And so she called the OB's office that happened to be right across the street from my dental office that I worked at. It was covered by the insurance, and so it's just like, okay, well, you know, OB hospital, like it just there was no question about it.
Okay. That's just sort of what you did. Was that the
Yeah.
same OB that had given you the Nuva ring?
No,
No.
different one.
Okay. I wasn't
Yep.
sure. Like, if you had any continuity of
My
care.
my gynecologist didn't deliver.
Okay.
She was more like surgical gynecology, so she
Yeah.
didn't deliver. So I had to find a new provider when I got pregnant.
Okay. Now, was this provider male or female?
They had a mix. It was 3 OBs and 1 nurse practitioner. One of the OBs was a male.
Okay. So is this a practice where you rotate?
Yes.
Okay. Is that mandatory?
I don't remember ever having an option.
Okay.
So I guess.
Yeah. That's kind of what they do here in Charlotte, North Carolina, is like there's these giant practices. And I mean like 18 OBs, and like 4 midwives. And they kind of say like rotate. And I'm like, ugh. I'm always like, why don't you just say, that's super weird. I'm only available when Dr. blah, blah, blah is working.
Right.
Isn't that funny how that works out?
No
I'm like,
continuity of care.
I know. That's always my recommendation for those listening to the podcast is I don't believe in rotating. Who cares who delivers your baby? You're fine. For your 40 weeks of pregnancy, build a relationship with someone.
Right.
That can get to know you, your baby, your body, your partner, if you have one, that kind of thing. Okay. So I alluded to the fact that we were going to talk about mental health. So let's, like you said, it was rough, right? So you get an OB, you're planning a hospital birth, but what was specifically rough about your pregnancy?
Well, I had been on like Zoloft earlier in my 20s, and I guess I had gone off it at some point. I don't even remember going off of it. And of course, if you get on Google and look up if it's okay to be on antidepressants when you're pregnant, it's like, oh, it's going to be horrible for the baby and you're not going to produce any milk. And so I was like, here I am, like super depressed and stressed and anxious and like overwhelmed with my entire life, but afraid to go back on medication because everything I could, find was like, oh, it's going to damage the baby. It's going to make you not be able to breastfeed. And so like, I feel like that added to my anxiety and stress. So I went through my whole pregnancy without being properly medicated, which I think just added to my weight gain and, not wanting to go out of the house, not wanting to go for a walk, it just all kind of built on top of each other.
Hold on. So did you come off your medication when you got pregnant? Like you were
I had
on
come
it?
off of it at some point before I got pregnant.
Okay, at some point before. So you were already
Yeah.
off it. It wasn't like you got pregnant and then cold turkeyed it. Okay.
No.
I mentioned that because if you're listening to this and you currently take Zoloft or an antidepressant and you get pregnant, do not cold turkey your antidepressant. That has massive consequences, including suicidal ideation. Massive consequences. So I need to say that to the audience. You have to call your healthcare provider and decide whether you're going to stay on your antidepressant and maybe adjust the dosage. Or if you're going to come off of it, you need a team that helps you plan for slowly coming off of your antidepressant. Okay. So you had already been off of it, but you were starting to feel, it sounds like, some of the signs of perinatal depression and anxiety, which is a hormonal thing often. Like it's often not like this massive thing happened to me and because of that, I'm depressed or anxious. It's like, it's just chemicals. This is just our brain as an organ. So did you talk to your OB about this, about going back on?
I really didn't. It was in the OB model of care, you come in, you get weighed, you pee in a cup, they measure your belly and you're off, It's just, there was no conversation. No, how are you doing? Do you have any concerns? What's your mental health like? It wasn't there. So there was no support to be had, I felt like.
Yeah. When my doula clients, Julie, have an appointment, I like literally have them go through how are they feeling from their hair down to their toenails. And that
Yes.
includes all of your organs in between. Like literally lay down and think about how your gallbladder is feeling, how your appendix is feeling, how your ovaries are feeling, how your brain is feeling, how your heart is feeling. We can get weird things like arrhythmias and I mean, your whole body from head to toe. So every single appointment is really important to think how's my vision? How are my lips? All of the things. So, and you're right. A 10-minute OB appointment in the United States with crappy, I mean, we just have such crappy maternity care.
God.
It's just terrible, which is why I'm a big proponent of midwifery care and continuity of care, staying with the same provider if you're low risk. So at this point, were you low risk? Like you didn't have any other medical complications?
Yeah, just low risk, no issues.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that your provider didn't ask you about your mental health. Your sister was studying to be a doula. Did you think about having a doula?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. She was gonna be my doula.
Okay.
But she was in Tennessee and I was in Virginia, so that
Gets a
comes up
little
later.
wonky. Okay.
Yeah.
And my sister was going to be my doula on my first, and she was just in Asheville, which is 2 hours away from Charlotte. she still made it, but it was hard. Okay. So you just fought through these feelings?
Yeah. I mean, I was really open with my husband about it. I told him, he knew my history. So going back, my depression started when I was 20. My dad was murdered and it just threw me down a spiral. And, so he had known that about me and he knew that I struggled with depression. And I was like, hey, like, this is going to be hard on me. Like, I need you to keep an eye on me. Like, tell me if it's getting too bad and I need to talk to somebody. And he eventually did, postpartum, like sat me down and was like, you need to talk to someone. So I feel like that's one thing I always tell partners and pregnant persons is that you need to keep an eye on your mental health. You need to talk to your partner about it, have someone who can keep an eye on you and let you know that you're not okay. Because you're not going to notice it yourself sometimes.
Yeah. So Julie, the audience needs to know, I did not know any of this before we started talking. So I'm learning with the audience in real time. And so I'm going to take this one step further as a trauma birth. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first time we are pregnant or having a baby after a significant trauma, you need a trauma-informed birth team. Trauma-informed birth team can be as simple as what Julie just said. The people in the room, like your partner, know and understand your trauma and can let you feel and be in your trauma in your birth space. One of the very first episodes I did on this podcast is with Rachel Coley. She's the CEO of Can Do Kiddo, this massive Instagram thing where she teaches you how to play with your newborn. And her dad died right before she gave birth. And there was no time in her story to resolve the trauma. In your story, Julie, sometimes there is trauma and there is time and we still don't do it, right?
Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast and you are a survivor of sexual assault, if you have a parent or a loved one who died, if you have experienced a big T or a micro T trauma and you haven't resolved it, I have no idea where Julie's going with this birth story. It often comes out in your birth as a very dark, hard journey. So we're going to get into what that looked like for you. Maybe it didn't look like that for you, Julie, but like I encourage everyone to get therapy, to talk about their trauma prior to going into birth, especially if you want an unmedicated birth. Okay? Because that epidural may really save you mentally. If you're not prepared for transition it can get really dark. So, Julie, I'm really sorry about your dad. And I just have to ask because you said murdered, not
Yes.
like my dad died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
Are you open to share about that?
Yeah. So it was 2011. I was at work and my mom called me. It was like, you need to come home. And I was like, well, that's weird. She had actually just sent me to this office to help out. She was my manager at the time. And so I'm driving home and my cousin texts me. She's like, I'm so sorry. I just heard about your dad. And I'm like, I have no idea at this point. And so I'm like driving way too fast home. And I'm like, he must have gotten in a car accident. There was a fire or something. And I come in the house and my mom's crying and she's on the couch. My parents are divorced at the time. So that I feel like I have to mention that.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, what's wrong? And she says, David shot your dad. David was a gentleman my dad rented the basement to at his house. And I was like, well, why aren't we at the hospital? And then it clicked that he was dead. And I mean, I was 20, my sister was 22, my little brother was 13. It was just, I mean, it rocked the family. And then, we had to go through the murder trial and all of that. And it sent me down a really bad place of addiction and all those issues and mental health issues that come from that. And so, yeah, it was a really big uphill battle through my pregnancy.
Oh, Julie.
Yeah.
Man. Was this person prosecuted?
Yes.
And
Yes.
are they
He
in jail?
called he called the police on himself. He was drinking. And my dad wouldn't turn the TV off and he got upset and shot him. And just completely unnecessary, ridiculous. And he called the police and was like, I'll be on the front porch when you get here. And yeah, he was sentenced to 50 years. I mean, he's an older gentleman, so he'll pass in prison. Yeah, sorry, it just got really deep.
Well, I'm gonna doula you. Have you forgiven him?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was his one friend in the world.
Yeah.
He killed the one person who cared about him in the entire world, and it sucks that that's what he has to deal with.
Yeah.
Took me a long time to feel that way, but it's just I don't have the space in my life, mind, heart to hate someone.
Yeah. I'm not like now I'm crying. I too am a trauma survivor. And I asked you that question because the only time, God, it just really got emotional. But the only time that we're truly free is when we forgive.
Yeah.
And that plays a role in our birth. So, my work partner and I specialize as one of our specialties is as a trauma informed birth team. This is something that we do, and we create space and experts around our clients to help them with their trauma and to help everyone in the room understand their trauma so that they have the freedom to surrender and let go in the birth process. So here you are, and all these things are coming up about your past, and you're not on your medication, and you haven't appropriately gone to therapy to deal with your trauma,
Not at all.
and you're about to have a baby.
Yeah.
So I understand when you say like it was now I understand when you say that it was just a really hard pregnancy.
Yeah.
But health-wise, you remained healthy. Okay. So as we get to the end of pregnancy, how did you know, like, I'm going into labor? Or how did you know you were in labor?
Well, I had a membrane sweep at 39 and 2. Had some cramping. I went to the chiropractor the next day. My chiropractor made a joke about, "Are you ready to have this baby? I'm going to give you the adjustment that's going to make it happen." And that was Wednesday. And Thursday morning, I woke up and I was like, my stomach hurts. I was like, I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird. It hurts. But I was like, I'm not 40 weeks yet. First moms go late. There's no way. So I get up, I get dressed, I go to work. I see patients all day. I remember around like 10 in the morning looking in the mirror and I was like, wow, my belly's dropped. Like it's low. I was like looking at a picture from the day before and that day, and it was totally different. And I had stomach and back pain all day. And like, I remember my patients, they're like, are you are you in labor? I was like, there's no, I'm not. It's just a little soreness. It's fine. And then finally after work, I was like, I might be in labor. And so I called my sister. It was like, 5:30. And I was like, hey, this has been happening all day. She's like, okay, well, you know, go for a walk. You know, if they stop, then it's probably not labor. But if they continue through like a whole walk around the block, about a mile, you might be in labor. And so I called her afterwards and I was like, hey, I had a couple of contractions that stopped me in my steps. Like, I think this is the real thing. You need to get here. Meanwhile, it's a 10-hour drive from Tennessee to Virginia. She was planning on flying up later that weekend. And so she was like, all right, well, I'm going to get in the car. I'll be there about 8 a.m. So, yeah.
I don't know how she's going to be much use to you after driving through the night and not sleeping, but okay.
He's a superhero.
Yeah. I was like, wow. I'm like, that's hard. It's hard enough for me to work a night shift ever,
Right.
but drive through the night, a whole nother thing. Okay. So it's like, so you kind of had some warning signs.
Yeah, real light, 10, 15-minute apart contractions, like just really light early signs.
And how would you describe those contractions for someone who's never been in labor before? What did that feel like for you?
So for me, my contractions, they start like a period cramp really low down, like where your uterus would be when you're not pregnant, and then like slowly kind of come up through the whole belly and through my back. So it's just like a wave that just comes over the whole stomach and then kind of, chills out.
And then wraps all the way around.
Yeah.
Yep.
The wrap around is how I know.
Yep. For me, I sort of felt like someone was putting a belt around me and then like tightening it, and it was like, get the belt off. Also called a contraction.
Right.
So you're having some of these. They're very sporadic. They're very mild. To the point, y'all, you need to hear Julie was able to go to work. Okay. Yeah. Something happens. This is what I always say. When my doula clients call me Julie and they tell me they're experiencing what you're experiencing, I'm like, just wait till the sun goes down. We're mammals.
Yep.
We have to be private, safe, dark, undisturbed, where all the predators in the world are away. So things, I say, when the sun goes down, you're going to know whether or not you're in labor or not. That's typically what I say when it's dark outside. Your sister was, or go for a walk. That's so true. Like, if you're truly in labor, nothing that you do will slow it down. You can get in the bath, it keeps going. You can get in the shower, you can lay on the couch, it keeps going. If you lay down and they stop, you're in prodromal labor. Warm up labor. Okay. So your sister gets in the car. She starts driving towards you. You said husband earlier. So like at some point, did you get married in your pregnancy?
In 2020.
Oh, okay. So like a long time
So still
later.
boyfriend
Okay.
then.
Okay. I was like, still boyfriend.
Took a long test drive on that one.
It's hard to like go back and like change the way we say what our partners' names are or whatever. So at this point, it's still your boyfriend. Okay.
Yes.
So is he at home? Is he with you or are you? Okay. So he's with you. You guys are both home. Your sister's on the way. Where's your mom?
So my mom's at her house. She lives like 20 minutes from us.
Okay. Did you plan for your mom to be part of your birth experience?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It was going to be my boyfriend at the time, my sister, who was going to be my doula, and my mom.
Okay. I love it. And so that in itself is a trauma-informed birth team, meaning everyone in the room is very aware of your past and your experiences. Okay. So what happened? So what happens that night?
So we're going to bed and my husband is like, well, I have to work in the morning, so I need to go to bed in case you're not actually in labor. And I'm like, wow, thanks, man. So
super smart though, because the doula who has prodromal labor clients all day and all night for like 2 weeks at a time, I'm like, we can't be calling out of work for 2 weeks. So
yeah, I should have taken a page from his book, but I couldn't go to sleep.
Okay.
So I lay down, I get back up, I go in the living room and I'm, kind of just doing my own thing, watching some TV. And, around like, I'd say maybe midnight or so, I called my mom and I was like, hey, I don't know what to do by myself. Like I need someone else here. He's sleeping. Okay. So my mom comes over and she's with me and, kind of rubbing my back and, let me, put my hands on her and, kind of like the slow dance, move. And I'd been calling my OB's office all night. They're 7 minutes apart. They're this many. And they're like, finally like, all right, well, they're 5 minutes apart. You can come on to the hospital if you want. So 1:30 in the morning, I told my husband, I was like, hey, we're going to head to the hospital. Meet us there. I'm not waiting for you. So my mom drives me. It's like a 10-minute drive. And it was like, it sucked. I remember just really hating those, like maybe 2 or 3 contractions I had in the car. And we get there and I'm 2 centimeters. And I was just distraught. I'm like, how? I'm like, I have been laboring all day, not realizing that it was just early labor, and my mom and my sister and my husband tell me now they wanted me to go home at the hospital. Apparently I don't remember that. And I told them I wasn't leaving.
Oh yeah. If you're a first time birthing person and you're planning, Julie, an unmedicated birth, we don't want you showing up to that hospital till you're like 6 or 7 centimeters dilated in active labor. So it's hard though, because I mean, we have really similar stories, Julie, but like I also showed up at the hospital 2 centimeters dilated. I'm a doula. Okay. When you're feeling it, you're like, this can't possibly get any stronger. It's like, ha, 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 ha. It like your threshold just changes, right? Like as time goes on, like they are going to get much stronger. They are going to get much longer. They are going to get closer together. And when you think you can't handle it anymore, your threshold changes, right? So it's like, okay. So I also didn't let me go home, Julie. So you're saying you were like, no, I'm not going home. I'm 2 centimeters. This has been 24 hours. I'm staying here. If I was your doula, I would have handcuffed you and pulled you.
He wasn't there
home.
Yet. I know. I'm like, she wasn't there yet. She got there after I've been there for 7 hours.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So they kept you, they let you stay.
Yeah. I guess they just weren't really busy and they had the space. They're like, all right. Well,
that's wild, because you're in your 39th week of, first of all, you're first time birthing person in your 39th week at 2 centimeters. Right. No hospital in my area would have kept you. None. Nope. Bye. Unless you had like high blood pressure or like something.
I will say I did have some high blood pressure right there at the end. So okay. I'm wondering if maybe that's why they were like, you can stay.
Okay. Because I was like, there is no hospital here that would have kept you unless you were showing a medical reason to stay. Let's just call it you threw one high blood pressure. So they were like, okay, stay. Okay. So this is middle of the night. You haven't had any sleep. You're tired.
I was exhausted. I remember it took forever for my husband to get there. It turned out he had gotten locked out of the labor and delivery area, had to go through the emergency room, couldn't get anyone to walk him to the hospital. It was like 3 a.m. or something before he showed up. Like we'd been there for a while. And at this point I was just beside myself with just exhaustion and it would hurt. And I'm like, I'm not progressing. And the nurse was like, well, I can give you something. And I didn't know what that meant. And next thing I know, there's Stadol in my IV.
Oh,
which
okay.
is a narcotic. And as I mentioned earlier, some, addiction issues. I didn't want any narcotics and I was pissed. So all it did was make me drowsy and they wouldn't let me get out of the bed. So I couldn't get up. I couldn't move around. I'm still feeling everything. And I was mad. Yeah. So I had to just wait it out until, I don't know, however many hours they felt was safe for me to get up and move again. But I was not happy.
Yeah. And Stadol goes straight to the baby too. Yeah. So you can only, this is why they offered you Stadol, Julie. You can get Stadol when you're early in labor.
Yeah.
Okay. Because a well-timed epidural is a thing, right? Like making sure you're in active labor. You're having contractions every 2 to 3 minutes. They're 60 to 90 seconds. They're very intense. Otherwise, an epidural may slow down your labor and or stop it. And then it's the cascade of interventions, right? Adpitocinate, all of these things. So sometimes they will offer you these IV pain medications, which do go straight to the baby, but you cannot do them late in labor, because if you do them late in labor, like I said, they go straight to the baby and the babies can come out and have a little bit of a hard time breathing because their whole system has been um like repressed also,
Right.
right? So anyway, this makes me very angry that they don't ask the questions like, do you have a history of substance abuse? Like, I watch this go on in the hospitals here. They don't ask. They ask you if you're being abused at home by your partner,
Right.
but
And
they
that's not
don't.
something that you like give willingly, unless you're asked, you're not going to tell anyone, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Now that I'm, years away from it, I'm very open about it. But
Yeah.
at the time, I didn't want to admit that. Are they going to
Yeah.
take my baby away? Like it's you don't get the help because you're afraid of the help.
Right.
You know.
Colin, my work partner, she just celebrated 12 years of sobriety.
Wow, that's amazing.
She's amazing. But part of working with her as someone who I've never had addiction problems, or a history of like alcohol or drug use or abuse, she brought that to our business. Intake questions and intake forms about that so that we can help you understand what's going in your body with an epidural, with IV medications, with things like nitrous oxide, right? Is so important. And unless you're a trauma-informed doula or an abuse-informed doula or an addiction-informed doula, a lot of support persons don't even know to ask these questions.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. But the fact that you were given Stadol without informed consent just sets me on fire. So it's taking advantage of a 24-year-old who they're just not willing to get to know you. And again, that goes back to continuity of care. If you had had the same OB for 40 weeks and developed a relationship at some point, Julie, you might have opened up to that person.
Yeah.
And then it would have been in your chart. So dang. So you get whatever. I know that was a long rant, but I want people listening to know to find someone safe to speak up to. Especially if there's a history of substance abuse in your past. So you get whatever, it's in your body. You get IV Stadol early on. How'd it make you feel?
It didn't do anything. It just made me drowsy, and it didn't help with the pain, and it just made me mad that I couldn't get out of the bed. And so I was like, you tell me what time I can get out of this bed and I'm getting out. Yeah. Like, I know I need to walk. I know I need to put pressure on my cervix, get this baby down. Because at this point, they're like, well, we're going to send you home if you don't progress. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to progress in the bed?
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
Hello.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So what'd you do?
So finally I get out of the bed and I took walks around that labor and delivery department, and I did squats on the wall and just everything I could. And finally I get back and they check me and I'm like 3.5 centimeters. And they're like, all right,
boom,
you're in, let's do it.
Progress is progress.
Around that time, my sister had gotten there, she started supporting me. And I think I got checked into my like labor and delivery room, like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, something like that.
Oh, after no sleep at all. Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I'd been up since 6 o'clock the morning before. Worked all day, labored all night. I was tired.
Exhaustion.
Yes.
What everyone listening, there's so many things to learn from you, Julie, but what everyone listening needs to learn is, like you said, take that play from your husband's playbook. Go to bed.
Yes.
Go to bed until you think that your pain threshold is like an 8 out of 10 and they're every 2 minutes and they're 60 to 90 seconds and there's zero break in between. Sleep, go to bed. Okay. So your sister gets there, the doula. Yay. Okay. I'm dying to know how this unfolds. Okay.
So I really got a lot of comfort from loud music, like country music. And so every time a contraction would start, I'd kind of like, gesture over to my, my husband or my sister, and they'd turn the music up, and I'd, kind of dance and, just back and forth, sway my hips. My sister would do double hip squeezes, little pressure on my lower back. And so we got through most of the day. And then, I can't remember the exact times, 3, 4 in the afternoon or so, I was 5 centimeters. and not progressing,
Oh,
or so my
boo,
OB told me.
Julie. I was like,
Yeah,
that's so much
I
progress
know. Now I know.
for a
And so
first
she's like,
time
we should
birthing
really,
person.
yeah. She's like, we should break your water because it's going really slow. It'll speed things up for you.
Oh no, she
So
did
I'm like,
not.
okay. My sister had gone to lunch, so
Yeah.
she wasn't there to like give me the hey, don't do it. Like, and so she breaks my water and it just got so much more intense. I didn't realize that the contractions were going to feel more sharp and just overwhelming. And you don't have that, water to, I guess absorb some of the pain. I don't know. Like it's just
Oh yeah, it gets way
so
more
much different.
intense.
And
Yeah.
so that was a big turning point in my labor that I remember looking at my husband and I was like, everything I've heard says that, the last bit of labor is like running a marathon. And I don't think I could walk a mile right now. I'm just exhausted. And so I decided to get the epidural, which was like the last thing I wanted. And that was horrible.
But hold on. I would venture to say, if I had been your doula, that an epidural was a tool that
Yes.
you used
Yes.
for exhaustion,
Yes. That's
not
exactly.
pain, so
Yeah.
that you had a chance at having a vaginal birth.
Yes.
Because if
I don't
you're
think I would have done it without the epidural.
yeah,
Like, just the rest.
if you're so exhausted that you can't push, there is a thing called arrest, right? Where
Mhm.
your baby is right there and you don't have the energy to push your baby out. And the baby is arrested, like stuck,
Yeah.
And they're not stuck because your pelvis isn't big enough. I believe that your body makes a baby that's the perfect size for your body, for you to birth. But we get a rest of the pelvis because you're so tired you can't push your baby out, and or sometimes we get an infection when our water is broken and our uterus just doesn't want to perform too. So I think you made a great choice.
Yeah.
Based
No,
on
looking
everything
back, like,
that
I
heard
couldn't have done it another way. I was just so tired.
Yeah.
And so I got the epidural, took 2 shots to get it in. I can remember feeling it going up my spine. It was horrible. Like, it didn't take at first. I had to redo it. Finally, it was good, whatever. So I took a nap. And I remember waking up and I was like, I think I'm ready to push. And my OB comes in. She's like, oh, you're 9.5 with a lip. And I was like, no, I'm ready to push. And she was like, well, if you want to push, go ahead, but you're going to swell and tear. So I wouldn't recommend it. So she let me do like 3 or 4 like pushes. And she was like, do you realize now you're not ready? I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So she gave me the opportunity, but told me like I wouldn't recommend it, which I appreciated.
Yeah. You do not want to tear your cervix.
Yeah.
Okay. You do not want to swell your cervix. You don't want to be 9.5 and go back to 6.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's
So
like the suckiest thing
You
ever.
had me do the peanut ball and like lay on my right side where the lip was and just kind of take it easy. So yeah, I will say as far as OBs go, this specific provider I birthed with was great. She wasn't the one who was in triage with me. I do have to say she was great.
Yeah.
That
is really important.
She's not the one who broke my water.
Oh, because they changed shifts.
Yeah.
Yeah, they changed shifts. I will say that she did the right thing, though. If you have a vaginal exam and we find out you are not 10 centimeters dilated, and because cervix doesn't actually dilate in a perfect circle, you guys. It
right.
dilates a little up to the left corner and the right corner and the bottom. It's like it's malleable. Okay. So every now and then it's like the cervix is completely thin and dissolved, 80%. Like if you think of a clock, think of like 3 o'clock to 12 o'clock is dissolved, but 12 to 3, there's just still a little bit of cervix that's just a little thicker and a little closed. And what you do is you put pressure on it, put the head on it. So that's why Julie's provider had her roll over to her right side to put pressure on it so that the rest of the cervix could dissolve with a few contractions. So that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you feel the need to push? Okay.
So I don't know if it was so much the need to push, but I guess I don't know if I took another nap or what, but I woke up and I remember reaching inside my vagina and feeling the baby's head. And I was like, I guess it's time. And like, I paged a nurse and she was like, You checked yourself? I'm like, it's my body. Yeah, I checked myself.
I'm so proud of you. Oh
And
my
like,
gosh. I'm so
so
proud of you.
everybody gets in the room and shows up, and I pushed for, God, 45 minutes or an hour. I just could not figure out how to push. I couldn't feel anything. I've got my husband holding my left leg, my mom holding my right, my sister cheering me on, and
While
it,
you're flat on your back.
flat on my back, of course, legs up, like
Yeah.
a dead spider. And, I push him out. No tears or abrasions. It was a beautiful vaginal birth. And he had a really short cord, so the doctor put him on my belly, and we really wanted delayed cord clamping. So she was like, okay, well, you're not gonna be able to get him up to your chest, and we'll just leave him on your belly. And she was like, hey, just the cord has stopped pulsing at this point. Are you cool with cutting it? Very, very informed on that end. My husband cut the cord. We bring it up to the chest, and he took right to breastfeeding. He is just a natural. It was amazing.
I love it. And I love that your provider like proactively was about delayed cord clamping.
Yeah. She like held it up and was like, hey, look, it has stopped pulsing. Like,
awesome. Did you feel it by any chance?
I didn't. Okay. My husband, he's like, I had the scissors and I kind of like held him over it for a minute before I cut it, just to get a little more delay if needed.
Soak it all in. Sometimes I'll have the parents like just grab the cord themselves, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of like if you put your fingers on your neck and you feel your pulse, you can feel it weakening. Yeah. Like you can literally feel it dying, like the placenta dying, like as the pulse stops. It's kind of cool. It's a neat thing. So a short cord, that's something I haven't really addressed on the podcast, Julie, is that umbilical cords can be all kinds of lengths. Sometimes they're really long and the babies wrap them around their necks and their bodies. And then sometimes they're really short, like 6 inches, 8 inches. And your baby comes out and only like will literally go up to your belly button until the placenta is delivered or the cord is cut. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Did you know that the sex was male in advance, or was that a surprise?
Yeah, no, we found out with both.
Okay. And what did you name him?
Leland.
Leland? What a gorgeous name.
I picked that when I was a teenager.
I loved it.
There was never any question.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I love it. My teenage name was Holden, from like The Catcher in the Rye, like Holden Caulfield. So anyway, that didn't happen. My kids are Max and Jagger, but I was gonna have a Holden. Like it was gonna happen. I like Leland so much. Okay. So did you like do anything like encapsulate your placenta?
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't. There wasn't even like a mention of it at that hospital.
Yeah. And you're not going to probably hear that mentioned from anyone other than a doula, right? So does your sister do that as part of her doula practice?
She doesn't, but she has a friend locally who does.
Okay. So when you look back at Leland's birth and that birth experience, it was clearly not what you wanted with this unmedicated kind of birth and having your sister there earlier than later. But I mean, the story that you just told, when you tell it, it feels quite positive.
Yeah. It was as good of an experience as it could have been, I feel like. Okay. I used the epidural as a tool, and I got my vaginal birth. I didn't have any tearing, so there was no physical healing down there. So it was great.
Yeah.
Postpartum, not so much.
Okay. So what happened?
The next day, the baby was all perfect. He got his discharge papers in hand, and they were getting mine ready, and they took one more blood pressure reading, and it was 160/10.
Shit.
Yeah. Stroke level. Like,
yeah.
They
well,
were
the 110, the diastolic.
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, the 110, the diastolic, 160. I don't want to freak everybody out. Because I was like, a lot of people are going to have a systolic in the 160s. But like that diastolic at 110, that's like a questionable thing. Yes. Okay. So people right now are going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Your normal blood pressures are going to be like, some of us like me live in the 90s over 60s. That's hypotension. Then you're going to have hypertension, which is like 145 over 90 or above, right? Everybody else is going to kind of fall in the middle, 110, 120, 130 over 60, 70, 80 kind of thing. If your blood pressure start getting up into the 160s, 170s, the top number, over any bottom number over 90. If any bottom number is over 100, if that bottom number goes to 110, we're getting very concerned about postpartum preeclampsia or hypertension, postpartum hypertension. So that's a scary number.
So they got it down slowly with medication. It was like Procardia and Labetalol, which have a side effect of causing headaches, which I didn't know until later. And I am prone to migraines. So I got the worst migraine of my life with a 2-day-old baby. And it was just horrendous. And I was in tears, and I was, tired and exhausted and depressed and trying to figure out breastfeeding. And it sucked. And I was just so overwhelmed.
Yeah. And the epidural can cause a post-birth headache too.
Yeah,
so it is,
all of it together was just like, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And I was in the hospital for 4 days.
Did the baby get to stay with you?
He did. He did. He was checked in as a visitor, and he got to stay in my room.
Okay.
And I'm like, thank God they caught it, because you had put something up the other day as once you leave the hospital, you're trash. You're nothing. Like,
yeah.
If I had that postpartum hypertension and had to come back, I would have had to, go through the emergency room without my baby. Like, and I'm like, thank God I was still there. Otherwise, that could have been a completely different situation.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, Julie.
Yeah.
Thank you for following my Instagram.
I was heated.
I was crying. I had just finished crying. I was like, y'all, I put an Instagram like rage out there the other day. Once you do not leave the hospital unless you feel 100% and your vitals are 100% and your bleeding is under control. Because if you leave the hospital within 24, 48 hours, whatever, you're no longer anything to them. You're no longer maternity. You're no longer triage. You're no longer labor and delivery in this country. You are go back to your primary care doctor and go to the emergency department. If anything is wrong with you, even if you know it is directly related to giving birth, it's like we just treat you like trash. We're like, bye. I had a client that rant was about in October with your story, Julie, but she had left the hospital, and as soon as she got home, she had that headache and the high blood pressures, and she sat in the emergency department and almost died for 10 hours. Okay. Then last week, or it was like 2 days ago, my client, 10 days postpartum, started hemorrhaging, bled through a pad in an hour, bled through her shorts, and they wouldn't see her, sent her straight to the emergency room. So, Julie, they caught you. Don't leave the hospital, y'all, without a set of vitals and your bleeding checked like the second before you walk out the door. Because if you walk out that door, your pregnancy's over. They don't care about you anymore. They'll only treat you in the emergency room, and that fires me up. So anyway, I'm glad you got checked in. So you were there for 4 extra days being treated with these medications.
Yeah. And I will say, I am thankful that I was able to use the lactation consultant on staff at the hospital for that 4 days. Yeah. That woman, godsend. She was there every time he was hungry. He had a little bit of a latch issue, so we got that fixed. And I mean, I had a 26-month nursing journey with him, and I don't think it would have happened if I hadn't gotten that extra little help for those days. So finding the positivity in it, that's that. I finally got discharged on day 4, and I remember getting home and sitting on the bed with this brand new, beautiful baby and just crying, like, what am I supposed to do? What do I do with this baby? What do I do with myself? And I was just completely overwhelmed. And I wish I had realized at that point that I had some depression issues that I needed to deal with. He was 6 months old before my husband finally sat me down and was like, you need to talk to someone. You need to get back on your medication. And I did. And it just totally changed everything. I was able to enjoy the baby and enjoy everything. I just feel like I missed out on so much of his infancy because I was so sad.
Okay. Did they not do a screener at your postpartum visit?
They might have. It was more about, are you ready to get your IUD? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Bye. Yeah.
4th trimester, meaning the 3 months after you give birth, it is critical to screen yourself for postpartum depression and anxiety, it is critical that our medical providers screen us. It is critical that your doula screens you. So anybody listening, you better print those screeners for postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety off the internet, off of the Googles, you know? You were on Zoloft before, Julie. Did you go back on Zoloft or a different medication?
Yeah, I went back on Zoloft.
Okay. I don't take pharmaceutical advertising, but I would if Zoloft wanted to pay me to talk about Zoloft on this podcast, because that's how much of a fan I am. I'm as much of a fan of Zoloft for postpartum as Glennon Doyle is for Lexapro on the Untamed podcast. Okay. She even wrote a song about her Lexapro. But Zoloft has saved so many of my clients' experiences, their life, their relationships with their child. It is a very powerful medication that, when used appropriately at the right dose, can make you feel better. Yeah. What dose were you on?
50 milligrams.
Yeah.
Didn't take much.
Yeah. Very low dose. Yeah. You can go all the way to 100 or more. So 50 milligrams once a day. How soon did you start to feel better after taking the medication?
I think I got a little placebo at like a week, just knowing that I was going to feel better. But, within a month or so.
Okay. Which is awesome. Do you still take it now?
So I had discontinued it at some point again. And then I actually got put on Celexa when my son was maybe 3 or 4.
Okay.
I had just realized again, I was overwhelmed and sad and just all of that. And getting on that again, just re-kicked my life into, drive again. I, went back to school to finish to further my dental hygiene degree, finally got married, we decided to move to Tennessee. So it really just fixed everything.
So closer to your sister?
Yeah. And my mom's here too.
Oh, okay. I love it. Okay. Because at the time your mom was 20 minutes away from you, and
she moved a little bit before my son turned 1. So
now everyone's together in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Okay. Well, I know that you have another child, because when you reached out to me in March, you had said that you had just given birth and that you wanted to tell that story. So let's jump ahead and get to your second birth story. 6 years later, right?
Yes.
You're married. You're on the correct medications. You're living in an environment where you're surrounded by support. And did you plan this pregnancy?
We did.
Good.
I will say, I blame the doctors and nurses from my first postpartum for making me wait so long. They told me at the time, kind of going back real quick, you will absolutely have this issue again of the postpartum hypertension, and you'll probably have a stroke. I don't know if we'd recommend that you have another baby. It scared the crap out of me. And I was like, well, I guess I could never have any more kids because my body just doesn't handle pregnancy well. And I'm going to have postpartum hypertension, and I'm going to have a stroke, and I'm going to leave 2 babies by themselves. And yeah.
No, this is a placenta thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that I've done the research, I understand that.
Okay. And it's individual.
Yes.
And it's not guaranteed that you have it one time and you have it again. So.
Yeah.
Horrible that they told you that.
Horrendous.
And not evidence-based.
Not at all.
Not medically sound. I don't even have a degree, and I know this.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, I'm sorry that you got scared. So what changed your mind? What gave you the power to be safe to try?
I think we just finally, one day I was like, I just turned 30. I want one more baby. Like, I always said I was gonna be done by the time I was 30, whatever. I don't know why that number mattered, but I was like, let's do it again. My husband was like, let's do it. So, we got married in December. I got my IUD out in January, checked with my provider then back in Virginia that the medication I was on was safe. She was cool with it. We get to Tennessee. I got my pregnancy test positive in July the 1st. So a couple months of trying. Took a little time for my cycles to regulate, I think. And then decided that I really wanted to do midwifery care instead of OB for this, this pregnancy after, I had read every book I could, anime, everything. And been listening to podcasts, yours, of course, your book. And I mean, I just listened to anything I could. And I was like, I'm ready. Like, I got this.
Yeah. And Tennessee is like the place, right? Because that's where like anime's the farm is.
Yes.
And like
I have a cousin who delivered there. I wanted to do it, but it was just too far away.
Yeah. And Danny Williamson is there too. She was the first doula to like work as a doula in Tennessee in the hospital system. And now she's a nurse practitioner that runs an integrative practice. But she's got a very cool story about being like the first certified doula working in Tennessee. So you're in like the place for birthing and midwifery care. Did you stay on your medication during this pregnancy?
I did. Like I said, I had talked with my OB who took my IUD out. I had talked with my psychiatrist back in Virginia. I had gotten a new psychiatrist once I got to Tennessee, discussed it with him. I thought he was supportive. That comes back. And I saw an OB for my confirmation sonogram. She also told me it was a good idea, healthy mom, healthy pregnancy. Like just the mental health is just so much more, I think, understood now and accepted and seen.
And research, tons more research in those 6 years. Yeah.
I couldn't find the research on it with my first. And now it's like so much more readily available and understood. Yeah. And so I went for my confirmation sonogram, just kind of jumping into it. And I went to an OB just because that was who had an opening, and it was a horrible experience. And they, we're going to do your pelvic exam and your pap smear. I'm like, I had one in January. This is July. Like, they're like, well, we'll do it again. You have new insurance. They'll cover it. Surprise.
It's all about money.
And she's like, well, we'll get you scheduled up for your sonogram. I was like, no. That's the only reason I'm here is for that sonogram. Like, we're going to be doing that today.
Look at you advocating for yourself, Julie. Well done.
I was prepared. I had all my questions. I was going to ask her about, how she could support me in unmedicated labor. But, I realized like 5 minutes in that I was not going to be there for long. I just wanted my sonogram and wanted to leave. And I mentioned to her the hypertension, and she was like, oh, well, we'll deal with it if it comes up. Okay, whatever. I had a meeting virtually with the birthing center later that day for the midwives. And I think it was an hour-long virtual appointment, and they discussed everything. How do I view my birth going? What do I want? How's my mental health? How did my last labor and delivery go? They recommended that I take an 81 milligram aspirin every day to lessen my chance of the hypertension being an issue.
Exactly.
I'm like, look at that difference. Like the OB didn't even mention that.
And proactive care versus reactive care.
Exactly.
Your OB offered a reactive thing versus being proactive. I love it. Didn't it feel like you were just getting a warm hug?
Oh my God, yes.
Midwives are amazing.
Loved it. I will say the birthing center in Nashville, it's the big one. They do have a lot of providers. So you do cycle through them, but at every visit, they had read my notes. They knew everything that I talked to the last midwife about. So it was like I'd seen them before, So that was really comforting.
Yeah. So did they accept you?
Yes.
Like, okay.
Yes. They were like, yeah, you sound low risk, well, the weight was an issue. I have, higher BMI. And so they were like, we'd like to see you only gain, maybe 15 or 20 pounds. I was like, all right, I got that. And so I was really on like keeping my weight down and everything. And
I mean, I'm only looking at your face, but like, you don't look like you have that high of a BMI.
Yeah. I mean high enough for a birthing center.
Do you mind sharing what your pre-pregnancy weight was?
Yeah. I'm 5'5" and my pre-pregnancy weight was 200.
What?
Yeah.
That is so small.
Yeah.
That makes me crazy. Okay.
So
I was like, I am looking at you right now. And I was like, and I am certified with the plus size doula directory too. So I'm like, I'm not seeing anyway. It just drives me crazy. Right.
Yeah. So going back to my psychiatrist. So I had a virtual appointment with him at 12 weeks, right after coming from the midwives who, once again, good idea to be on your medication. I told him, I was like, hey, I'm pregnant. I'm super excited. And he got pissed. He was like, you're pregnant on this medication that I prescribed you. You could have birth defects and this and that. And I can't believe you're so you don't care about your baby. And, you were honest. And I was like, what? I'm like, did you not look at your notes from last time when I told you I was planning on getting pregnant? And he dismissed me as a patient. and told me I needed to find someone else to write the prescription for me.
Good for him, because he's uneducated and you just needed
I
to be
was
with someone
like,
else. And guess who can write you
good
that
riddance.
prescription? Your midwife can write you that prescription.
So I was like, wow. And I, of course, like contacted the higher ups for him and was like, this is completely unprofessional and like belittling. And it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and all I can think is maybe that provider had one experience with something,
right.
and it's not correlated. Oh, sorry, it's correlated, but it wasn't causation at all.
Right.
And so, we never know what someone's history is, but the data is there. And if your medical team and your medical provider think that it is safe for you to continue on your antidepressant, then you can make the choice to continue on your antidepressant.
There's a lot of risk benefit analysis going on. And
yeah.
Yeah.
So good for you. Okay. So then you continue on like with this amazing, like planning your unmedicated birth at the birth center. And how does that go?
The prep went amazing. I was physically, mentally getting, ready. And I went for my gestational diabetes screen and I failed by 3 points.
No.
Right at the cusp. Right at the cusp.
So like 143.
Yeah.
Literally.
Just right there. And so I went, I did the 3-hour and they set me up in a beautiful room and I took a nap and I failed.
Okay.
And my fasting
failed,
was perfect. Yeah,
you
quote,
mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, by failed,
so my fasting was perfect. My 3-hour was perfect. The 1 and 2 hours were high. And so they sent me to see an endocrinologist and he looked me in the face and he says, I'm so sorry. You've been misdiagnosed, but you've been diagnosed.
Damn it.
Now I'm high risk and I'm risked out of the birthing center and I have to deliver in the hospital. And I was so bummed.
And you couldn't just take your sugars every day and kind of like prove it?
That's what I did. I did my sugars every day. I never got a high reading.
Oh man.
They were completely controlled
My
diet.
Heart
and he was like, I am so sorry. It's like he put it in my medical notes that he was like, she doesn't have gestational diabetes. I had gained 12 pounds at 30 weeks.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I was so healthy. So it sucked. I'm not a sugar eater. So my body wasn't trained for sugar and carbs. And so when I had that big drink, that's how he described it. He was like, of course your body didn't go through the sugar because it's not used to it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just spikes, and it takes more insulin and there's just a little bit of a delay there. Oh, that just makes me so sad for you. So in my area, some of the birth centers, the midwives have rights at the hospital. Yes. So did you get to stay with your midwives?
I did.
Oh,
so it's the same practice. They just deliver in the hospital. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm still going to get midwife care. That's great.
So the fact that you get to stay with, again, the continuity of care and you don't have to also change providers, like that just gives me a little bit more peace because we can have a birth center like birth at a hospital. I do it every day. That's what my job is, So now you're in the hospital, but you have the same midwives. How this time did you know that you were in labor?
So I woke up about 3:00 in the morning on March the 3rd. I was 38 weeks and 5 days. And I had that lower stomach pain radiated up through my stomach and through my back. And I was like, is that a contraction? It's like, there's no way. I get up, I go pee, I lay back down. I have another one in a few minutes, 7-10 minutes. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to keep sleeping. I learned this time I'm going to keep sleeping. So I keep laying down through them around maybe 4 or so. I was like, okay, I need to get up. Went into the living room. I didn't want to wake anybody up. And my son had to go to school. My husband, he's still asleep. I'm like, let him sleep. So I was like, if they keep going, I'll alert everybody around 6 in the morning. So 6 in the morning comes, I send my sister a text. I woke up, my son for school. I, of course, sat there and cried. This is the last time I'm going to hold him as an only child, all of that. And I told him, my mom's going to be there to get him off the bus. I'm going to probably have the baby that day. I wouldn't be home. And so I walk in, take him to the bus between contractions, not too bad yet. And, I forgot to mention for this birth, I had 2 doulas, my sister Jenny and her friend Natalie, who's also a prenatal masseuse. So I've been getting prenatal massages through her, which was amazing.
Oh my gosh, so
I was like, I'm going to have all the support.
Yeah.
The hospital was allowing your partner, a doula and a support person. So I was like, done. Like, you don't need another both doulas. And so,
so your mom got the boot for the massage therapist.
She did. Yeah. And I was like, I have heard enough birth stories of people not being comfortable to labor, like with not knowing if their kid's taken care of. Yeah. I was like, I need you to be with him.
Yep.
And that way I won't have to worry about him at all. So
100%. We're again, goes back to the mammal thing.
Yes.
When we know our young are taken care of, we're good. We can go into labor.
Yep. So we decided my sister and Natalie would show up around 10 or so, so I was like, I went and I laid back down in my bed and I closed my eyes between each contraction and they laughed at me. I had a laundry basket filled with clothes and I would lay on my left side and put my right leg up on the laundry basket.
Perfect.
And then get up, have a contraction, lay on the other side, put my leg on it, just trying to keep my pelvis open while relaxing.
Julie, next time there's this thing called a peanut ball you can buy for $10 on Amazon.
I was going to buy it, but I thought I had more time.
Wait, what, on that note, what week gestation were you again?
38 and 5.
38 and 5 and 39 and 2. So you know that you go give birth early.
I just don't cook them all the way. Apparently.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're plenty cooked. Trust me.
So Jenny and Natalie showed up around 10, 11. They continue to just support me, laboring on the back porch. I did a lot of time sitting on the toilet, just letting my pelvic floor relax. I got in the bathtub. I've got, jets in my bathtub and like all the windows were open. It was just beautiful and relaxing. And it was a nice day out. We had the windows open. It was just serene and beautiful and everything I had pictured. And around 2:00 in the afternoon, I started to change. And I was like, I need the epidural. I need to go to the hospital. I'm done. I'm over it. I don't want to do it anymore. And
sounds
of course,
like transition.
Yeah, of course, 2 doulas. They're like, okay, we'll get the bags packed. Don't worry. Meanwhile, I've got this huge snack bag I've been packing for weeks because I was like, I'm going to eat at the hospital. I'm going to do my thing. So we get all that in the car. I'm waiting for my mom to get here. They had sent her to the grocery store to get a bunch of stuff. So she's not there yet. But I'm like, I have to see my mom before I go. Yeah. I have to know she's here for my son, And so she shows up around 3 p.m. And I'm like, y'all, get me in the car. I'm ready to go. We have a 50-minute drive to the hospital.
Are you like shaking or vomiting or pressure in your butt? Nothing like that. Okay.
No,
just very intense contractions.
Yeah, just very intense. Finally, about 3:30, we're in the car. I mean, we are pulling away as my son's bus is pulling up because I didn't want him to see me in that much pain. He had seen me in the morning. There were like light contractions, but I didn't want him to see me like that in it.
Primal.
And yeah, exactly. And so I had a TENS unit on my lower back, which was amazing. In the car. My husband luckily has an SUV, and as dangerous as it might be, I was on my knees, like leaned over the back seat.
Nope, that's the method of choice.
You couldn't have told me to sit down if I had tried.
Put the seatbelt around the birthing person, y'all. But yeah,
right.
Hands and knees in the back seat. Yep.
Right. So Jenny, my sister, is in the car with me. My husband's driving. Natalie's following us in the other car. She's got my, birth ball and all of that. We've got towels in the car just in case, 50 minutes to the hospital. My husband's just going. And so my sister tells me that my vocalizations changed a lot in the car. And she's like, I thought we were going to have that baby on the side of the road with how you sounded.
Yeah.
She's like, it completely changed, your stomach shape changed, like the baby fully dropped, like it was on. And so we get to the hospital and I get out the car and I just start bawling. I was so happy to be there because I was like, it's like mentally, I just needed that next step, And so
you made it, the stress of like,
Yes, I'm not going to have this baby on the side of, I-40, like. And so we go in, they have you check in through the emergency department for some reason. And the woman is trying to talk to me in the middle of a contraction. And she's like, what's the last 4 of your social? And I screaming at her for everyone to hear.
I'm about to have a baby.
Right.
That's what it sounds like as you're mid-push.
Right. They're like, here's your wheelchair. I'm like, I can't sit in a wheelchair. And the woman, she was like, you can kneel in it if you want. Super sweet lady. So it's 4:30. So she wheels me all the way down the hall in the elevator up to labor and delivery, where my midwife meets me. I've never met this specific midwife before. Her name was Bethany, and the voice of an angel. She just gets down on the ground and is like underneath me as I'm leaning on the wall. She's like, hi, I'm Bethany. I'm your midwife. I'm here for you. And we find out then that all the labor and delivery birth suites are taken. Okay. There are no birth suites available.
Stop it. This happens in my hospital too. There's like, there's some 12, overflow places, but it happens. They have
like 12 rooms. Like, what the heck?
For a giant city like Nashville.
Yes. And so they're like, well, we're just going to put you in the labor and delivery, the triage room, even though clearly you're past, you need to be triaged. I'm like, okay, whatever. And the midwife was like, I'd like to check you if you're okay with it. She was like, you don't have to get on the bed, because I hadn't even gotten on the bed yet. She's like, just lean against the bed. So I kind of lean back. She checked. She's like, oh, you're, 80% of face, -1 station. But she didn't leave me. And it was like, once I realized she hadn't left and she's sitting there doing hip squeezes on me as the midwife, I was like, oh, like this is on, like we're doing it. Yeah. And like, I remember them, I was like, I want nitrous. And so they did a COVID test, sent it to the lab, never came back. No
time for it, because you do have to test negative, because nitrous is aerosolized. And so like it can spread COVID all over the room.
Right.
So you do have to be negative for COVID if you're going to do nitrous. Here's what I need the audience to hear. You're a second-time birthing person. You are 80% effaced. That means that cervix couldn't be thinner and you're 6 centimeters dilated. A -1 station, that head can't be lower. You can go from that to 10 in 1 or 2 contractions. So if I'm your doula, I'm not leaving your side either. That's why that midwife didn't leave.
Yeah. Realize that now. And so, the nurse comes in and she's like, I'm just gonna check the baby's heartbeat. And they'd had a really hard time finding his heartbeat during my pregnancy. So I knew exactly where to point. I was like, right here. I pointed my left side. She found it right away. It was great. He's a little wiggle worm. And I can remember having contractions, like looking up at the screen and seeing all these women on the monitors. I was not on a monitor. They were like, we're going to get your IV in. My sister's like, oh no, she's not going to have an IV. Thank you. We've kept her very hydrated today. And so no IV, which was, oh, I forgot to mention, in my first birth, my IV slipped in my hand when I was pushing and put IV fluid into my hand for an hour. And I had a balloon hand for the first week of that baby's life. And it was miserable. So I really wanted to avoid an IV this time. And I was really happy that I did. So side note. So I'm going through contractions and I'm like, y'all, I need to poop. And they're like, well, do you need to push? I'm like, no, I need to poop. I need to go to the bathroom. I need to go to the bathroom. Like, let me go. And they had been trying to keep me from going to the bathroom because in the triage, there's one shared bathroom in the hallway. Okay. So I go to the bathroom and I'm on the toilet and I'm, pushing, cannot help the pushing. We thought my water had broken already. We were wrong. So we've got me, my husband, my doula, my sister, my midwife, all in this tiny bathroom, and I'm pushing and my water explodes.
Everyone. And by pushing, you mean you're pushing your baby out. You don't actually have to poop out.
Yes. 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 So, audible pop, like my midwife, she's like, I've never heard it pop that loud. Everyone's feet are soaked. The floor is soaked. And I keep hearing nurses come to the door, which is wide open. And I'm like, I'm sorry I'm loud. I'm sorry I'm so loud. I'm sorry if I'm scaring everybody. Turns out there was other women who needed to use the bathroom who were in early labor. And my midwife kind of like gestures to the floor. She's like, what do you want me to do? There's amniotic fluid on the floor. This bathroom's now closed. Like, sorry. Good. And they're like, hey, do you want to go back to the triage room and we can get the birth stool? And I was like, if my nitrous is not ready, I'm not moving. I'm here. This is where it's happening.
Oh my God. I love you, Julie. I want to be your doula.
I was like, no, this is my thing right now. And so next thing I know, I'm on my hands and knees on the floor in the bathroom.
With all the amniotic fluid everywhere.
With all the amniotic fluid on the floor. They've thrown down some towels. I have this beautiful picture of my midwife laying on the floor, like up under me, ready to catch a baby if needed. Like, she was amazing.
Will you send it to me? Can we share it?
Absolutely.
Oh my God,
I sent it to her. Awesome. She was like, can I have that? Like,
yeah, I love it. A good midwife will say, I can catch a baby anywhere.
Yeah, that's what they had told me. They're like, I can catch that baby any way you want. And so I'm, leaned up on on the floor, kind of leaned up in the corner of the wall on my husband, who's in a squatting position, poor thing, this whole time. It was like 10 minutes, but whatever. His legs were tired. He tried to stand up at one point and I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, my legs hurt. I was like, so sit on the ground. So I'm, feeling like full fetal ejection reflex. I have no control over this. I'm screaming, get this baby out of me. I'm going to tear in half, those poor women in triage that day. Like, and so I, once again, reach my hand in my vagina and I'm like, is that the baby's head? And she's like, yes, you're feeling the baby's head. So I just kept my hand there and pushed and guided it out. It was total instinct.
Oh.
And his head came out and shoulders slipped right through the midwife's hands onto the ground on the towels.
Oh, I love it though. Nice and safe though.
Yeah. And I picked him up and I brought him to my chest and
long cord,
short cord.
Okay.
Tore and exploded.
Oh my God. You ripped it.
I ripped it.
Oh
I ripped it.
God.
So now
but it's so hard because it's instinct. It's just
blood.
instinct.
Yeah. I mean, it looked like a murder scene in that bathroom.
A lot of people don't know that you can tear the cord if you do that. Yeah.
Oops. So my midwife, out of just pure instinct, just grabbed the cord stump and was like, I need a clip.
Yeah, I need to clamp this so you don't bleed out.
She held that thing as tight as it possibly could, and we clamped it. And I mean, he was perfect. No tears, nothing, and it was great.
Oh wow, yeah. Julie, what a fun, amazing, fascinating birth story, and it's very redemptive.
Yes,
too. So much between empowered versus unempowered, the right birth team versus not the right birth team. And even though you had this little diversion from birth center to hospital, you used your voice to get all of the things that you wanted. And you had the right team that's willing to catch your baby on the floor in the triage bathroom. Oh my gosh. I love it.
Yeah.
You are amazing. Thank you so much for telling your stories and being on the Birth Story podcast today. Thank you for listening to Birth Story. My goal is you will walk away from each episode with a clear picture of how labor and delivery might go, and that you will feel empowered by the end of your pregnancy to speak up, plan, and prepare for the birth you want, no matter what that looks like. Okay, I have a really amazing discount for you guys with anjahealth.com. So it's ANJA health.com. They are my exclusive partner for cord blood and tissue banking. If you've listened to episode 88 of the podcast, where I interview the CEO, Catherine Cross, all about cord blood and tissue banking and the 1,000 questions that I had. My child has cerebral palsy from a birth injury. I cannot go back in time. It is one of my greatest regrets. So I partner with Anja Health because I'm so passionate about cord blood and tissue banking, and I really want to teach you guys all about it. Code Birth Story gives you the biggest discount that there is available, and they are committed to Birth Story always being the biggest discount. So right now it makes your kit only $20, which essentially covers shipping. So it's $180 off with code Birth Story. So please consider cord blood and tissue banking. Look at anjahealth.com. Again, it's ANJA health.com.